And today I will be doing the Kalashnikov group as my final project. So a brief introduction to the company. Kalashnikov Concern is a arms defense manufacturing company within the defense industry, and it is based in the city of Ijevsk, Russia. The company is well known throughout the world, of course, for the manufacturing of the famous AK-47 assault rifle, as well as other firearms. It is the largest arms manufacturer in the Russian Federation, producing at least 95% of the nation's small arms and exports to more than 27 countries abroad. In addition to providing for armed forces, the concern markets to areas such as the recreational civilian firearms sector. So since it is a concern, the company has a total of 3 firearm brands: Kalashnikov for combat and civilian weapons, Baikal for civilian and hunting, and Izmash for sporting rifles. So a brief history of the organization. An army was established in the city of Ijevsk in 1807 and was originally supplying small arms for the Russian Imperial Army. When the USSR was established, the factory continued to supply weapons and small arms for the Soviet armed forces and was equipped with a more efficient manufacturing base, such as the conveyor belt system, which helped increase output. During the Second World War, Engineering Plant No. 74 became the main manufacturing base for the Soviet Red Army. After the war, the plant hired war veteran and machinist Mikhail T. Kalashnikov after showing interest in his submachine gun design. So the plant would continue to produce Kalashnikov rifles throughout the 20th century and even into the 21st century. After the fall of the USSR, the company evolved and privatized, and in 2013, Kalashnikov became a concern. So now I would like to conduct a brief external analysis of the concern. So international trade agreements. So even during the Cold War and as a state-run entity of the USSR, the company provided small arms to fellow communist allies during the Cold War, and the state-run entity which exported the small arms to said countries. With the fall of the USSR, Kalashnikov began to increasingly branch out to the civilian firearms industry, and as a result, created new products for said industry. So the company began to appeal to export markets previously cut off during the Cold War, as in the case of the United States and Western Europe. In 2021, the Kalashnikov group of companies announced a 70% increase in export of military hardware. This mostly consisted of the AK-100/200 assault rifle series and the Ratnik Future Infantry System. That same year, the Indian Defense Ministry and a joint Russian-Indian venture, Indo-Russia Rifles Private Limited, agreed to a supply of AK-203 assault rifles, which would actually be manufactured in India with technical assistance coming from the Kalashnikov group. Rosbaron Export is the state intermediate agency in charge of the import/exports of defense-related and dual-use technologies, under which Kalashnikov exports its products. In terms of economic factors, Rostec, which is the state-owned defense conglomerate, holds 26% of the concern's share, while the remaining 74% is held by private investors. Kalashnikov Concern also reported an increase in capital from their private investors by 75% in February 2018. So Kalashnikov, like many of the former entities in the former Soviet Union, had to in some way move on from the state-run economic directives of the past and adapt to newer market economic strategies. This included privatization, selling of shares to private investors, and these were instrumental in keeping these companies afloat in the economic chaos following the end of communism and adapting to the 21st century global consumerism leap. In terms of technology, Kalashnikov has always been at the forefront of the utilization of innovative methods and technological advancements to perfect their products and services. Even during the World War II, Kalashnikov's predecessors utilized the full-scale mass production and assembly line method to churn out weapons for the Soviet Red Army. Even during the evacuation of major industry to the east to prevent them from falling to German forces, the industry managed to immediately resume large-scale production. Even today, Kalashnikov Concern continues to utilize technological advancements made in the arms manufacturing industry, and these include branching out to other sectors of the industry, including the use of autonomous or uncontrolled vehicles, a perfect example being the Uran-9 unmanned combat vehicle, which saw use during the Syrian civil war by Russian forces. So in terms of environmental factors, Kalashnikov is really in a gray area, as there's not really much information on the environmental practices of the concern per se. On the other hand, Kalashnikovs have ended up and made their way into war zones, whether legally or illegally, and usually around the third world, and this has contributed to the ongoing conflicts and humanitarian crises. In terms of legal factors, Kalashnikov has always been a subject of controversy since the Cold War. A good number of their small arms have ended up on the black market and have made their way into conflict zones, being wielded by various conflicting factions, such as terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, and other groups. Since the conflict in Ukraine in 2014, Kalashnikov Concern has been the target of sanctions from the West over Russia's involvement in the war in eastern Ukraine. In addition, Ukrainian DPR rebel forces have utilized Kalashnikov weapons in the war against the Ukrainian government. So now that we've got the external analysis out of the way, we want to focus more on an internal analysis. Strengths. So in terms of strengths, again, Kalashnikov has a strong brand recognizability due to the AK-47, which has been portrayed in various film and media and popular cultures, such as the movies about Rambo or the Call of Duty video game franchise. But in addition to that, Kalashnikov has also gained a reputation as being also very rugged and very cheap to maintain. As such, is that it has made a brand popular among those with a tight budget and who want a reliable firearm that will carry them through. So the concerns of close association with the Russian government has also ensured them a steady stream of business and supply. It also has a vast export market appealing to those countries who need to readily equip large numbers of their troops. These include the post-Soviet countries that still rely on Russia to maintain their armed forces, and as such, Kalashnikov has had a reliable market in the former Soviet sphere. In terms of weaknesses, with such a large concern and its close association with the government, it has been the target of sanctions, going back to Russia's intervention in Ukraine, and now the current war there. This may see Kalashnikov's export market practically shut off severely, affecting its sales. In addition to that, rival arms manufacturers in countries like Turkey could use the closing of Russian arms sales to further their goals in the arms industry. This has resulted in Kalashnikov being forced to revamp their marketing, to reorient to other regions such as the Asia Pacific or Latin America. However, with the current war in Ukraine and the subsequent economic and international isolation of the Russian Federation, Kalashnikov may see a harder future in the export markets abroad, or at least in Western countries. In terms of opportunity, after the end of the Cold War, Western markets were once again open to Russian products, and an interest began, especially amongst the civilian firearms sector in the West, of Kalashnikov-based products. Again, going back to the sanctions over Ukraine, off, with the imports of firearms or even parts of firearms being banned in most Western countries. Even before sanctions set in, demands in Western countries skyrocketed, with people rushing to purchase Kalashnikov products before the sanctions had set in. So again, in terms of stock, the Kalashnikov Concern has set a precedent with the investment capital in the concern by 74%, raw stock selling 26% to Alexei Kravchuk, who himself was the chief executive officer of Kalashnikov. Again, with potential threats, it's mostly in the geopolitical realm. Due to its close association with the Russian military and Russian government, Kalashnikov was sanctioned by the EU and the United States over the Russian annexation of Crimea and the ongoing war in Ukraine. As a result, the Western markets, which were the largest pool of civilian firearms to Kalashnikov, were lost, so their marketing needed to be revamped. Again, with the current situation in Ukraine, this already tiny market pool may shrink further as the Russian economy becomes increasingly isolated and potential markets look for other arms manufacturers. So finally, you want to focus on the 4 Ps of marketing. So the products, again, going back to the small arms, the famous Kalashnikov assault rifle series. And these include the famous AK-47s, AK-74, RPK light machine gun series, SVD Japanov sniper rifles, etc. And these make up the basis of the marketing for Kalashnikov. But in addition to that, they also have branched out into other areas such as the unmanned vehicle areas. Pricing. So in 2014, the average price of a civilian Kalashnikov was around $1,500. But again, it was around $600 earlier before the sanctions. This has been due to sanctions, again, being placed on the concern as a result of the war in Ukraine. And and this has resulted in the doubling of prices since Western markets seem to be closed off to Kalashnikov. So in terms of non-official purchases, for example, from the black market, a Kalashnikov could go for as much as $2,800 or $3,600. However, there are also cheaper weapons available. Again, a big pricing factor is in which type of product variant is being sold, with many variants from the original Russian model being mass-produced in countries such as China, Pakistan, North Korea, and others. So again, in terms of place, its primary manufacturing base is located in Russia, in the city of Ijevsk, and this has globally been the army of Russia. Kalashnikov Concern has also been a market in Russia, with the majority of its government and export markets located in the former Soviet space. So before or after the Cold War, Kalashnikov found new grounds in the civilian firearm industry and hunting, with a large export market in the West, at least until now. Recently, Kalashnikov has begun to tailor its production and export market to the Asia Pacific, Africa, and Latin America. Kalashnikov, of course, is aware of the brand's product association with war, the AK-47 being a typical bad guy gun, or a weapon wielded by terrorists and guerrillas to kill old. The concern's product has achieved a universal recognizable image due to its portrayal in media and popular culture. Recently, Kalashnikov has been attempting to rebrand its product as weapons of peace or a counter-terrorism weapon in an effort to improve marketing. Kalashnikov's new branding and promotion aims to reflect its three core values: reliability, responsibility, and technological efficiency. Now here are my citations. If you have time, take a look at them. They are really useful information. Before we end, a final forward, quote, "Things that are complex are not useful. Things that are useful are simple." Now, this is by Mikhail Timofeyevich Kalashnikov, who was the inventor of the famous AK-47 assault rifle. Now, this quote really pays homage to the basic qualities of the Kalashnikov assault rifle. It's cheap, it's simple to use, easy to maintain, and it's reliable for the user. And with that, I would like to end this presentation. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.